Hey guys, I'm Matt with BZB Gear, coming at you with another video, but this time it's going to be on another PTZ camera, specifically the VPTZ. This is going to be kind of our entry-level lineup of PTZ cameras, but really what we want to focus on with this camera specifically is stuff like education, small businesses, anything where you might need a small, compact, one-solution camera that also provides very good image quality. So for this guy, it's going to be a 1080p. And while it is cheaper than the UPTZ, as you can see, you might be really impressed by the actual image quality that we get out of this camera. Now, right now we have lighting set up to be a pretty decent, nice, quote-unquote professional setup to try and give you kind of the idea of what the best case scenario of this camera would be. So this is what you're going to be expecting, but that's not what we're focusing on today. Today, the idea is going to be to take this camera specifically and show you how to set it up for non-ideal lighting solutions. So what I mean by that is, for a lot of teachers specifically, you're not going to have the greatest lighting setup. It's going to be kind of difficult for you to get lights up on around your classroom or on like stage if you're doing more of a lecture type deal. So we're just going to show you how to set this up for stuff like fluorescent lights or other lighting fixtures that you commonly find in office buildings or classrooms. All right, now we're back. Obviously, some things have changed. We are now on the landing screen of our camera settings, and the image is quite a bit cooler, almost muted. There's not a whole lot of color to this image. What I did was I just set a lot of things to auto, which is what they mostly come out of factory default. It's not necessarily a fault of the camera, it's doing the best that it can, but sometimes auto settings can be very gimmicky. It's one of the things that you get taught very, very early on in videography, is that for a lot of things you don't want to rely on manual. Or excuse me, you don't want to rely on auto. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go ahead and go manual for a lot of things. I turned off the professional lighting, and the only light source that I have right now is just going to be the fluorescent tubes above. So trying to go for as close to an office look as I possibly can, or rather an office environment. But don't worry, we're going to salvage this image. It's going to look great by the time we're done with it. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go here into our configuration tab in the top right corner. And for instant results, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to focus on the white balance mode. It's right down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Right now it's set to auto, and I personally don't recommend auto white balancing. There's two things that we can do. We can either go with trigger, which is going to allow you to take something like this, where the backside is just a straight white card, and white balance off of that. Or, since we're inside and there's fluorescent tubes above, I already know what the color temperature of most fluorescent tubes is, and that's going to be about 5,000 Kelvin. So if I hit 5,000 Kelvin here and I hit save, instantly you're going to start seeing some color coming right back into this image. So right away, we've already gotten quite a bit of a salvaged look here. And by salvaged look, I mean it actually looks a lot better. So this isn't too far off from what you're getting with some professional lighting. So the key is just know the environment that you're working in. It's not necessarily about what equipment you have, it's about what you can do with the equipment that you have. So we're going to continue working on this and making this a better image. Contrast is what I'm going to bump next. I'm going to bump that to about 8, and I think I'm also going to bump saturation to 8. Just save those. It gives you just a little bit more of a rich image, and you're not going to sacrifice that much. Sharpness, I think I might also bump up by 2 just to give a little bit more clarity to the image. And then we're going to go to camera next. Now, right now I have the exposure set to auto. I'm going to go ahead and turn that to manual because we want as much control as possible, especially when it comes to the exposure of the camera, since we don't have control of the lighting above. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It already changed settings to what I had it to before. So that's going to be shutter speed of 1/50. Shutter speed, all you really need to know with that is whatever you're recording in, it just needs to be double that. For the iris, We currently have it at f5.6, and I already covered how iris works in the last video, but just to give you another kind of just quick rundown, the iris is basically some blades that sit in the lens, and they either close to let less light in, or they open to let more light in. The trade-off is if it's opened, like wide open to have as much light as possible, you're going to have a shallow depth of field. So for you teachers, this might be something that you don't want to go with, and you might want to explore something with a little bit of a higher iris, just because that means when you're moving around, you're going to stay in focus, and also anything that's behind you, such as like a blackboard or a whiteboard or your presentation, is going to stay way more in focus. So I highly recommend for an application like that, you consider going with something a little bit higher. So I think I'm going to maybe bump this up to 6.8 in our case, because it already looks a little bit, no, that looks a little bit too dark. So we'll split the difference and we'll just stick with 5.6. I think 5.6 provides you a pretty good image at this point. Gain, we're going to leave that at -3 dB. I don't think the image really needs too much more light coming in. And on top of that, the lower you can keep the gain, the better as far as image quality is concerned, because it's going to have less grain introduced. After that, I don't really touch anything else in the settings over here for camera, but let's go ahead and go to the preview and take a look. I don't know about you guys, but considering I don't have any access to professional lighting right now, and the only thing that's lighting me is just the fluorescence, I think this looks pretty good. I think it's pretty close to what we were getting with the professional lighting, but not quite as good. So I really hope that helps you guys. Just know that regardless of the conditions you're in, as long as you have good fundamentals and as long as you have some basic control over the camera, you can still get some good image quality out of it. So thank you for tuning in. I've been Matt with BZB Gear, and keep your ear to the ground for more info coming from us and more how-tos on how to get your cameras looking the best that they possibly can. See you guys next time.